All right, folks, stick around. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to be speaking with Trudy James, the producer of the film that's going to be playing Thursday, 4 o'clock at the education station here at Twistworks. And the film is Speaking of Dying, and you produced this film. Am I right about that, Trudy?
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What does a producer do?
Well, I didn't know what a producer does. Yeah. I'm a hospital chaplain. I've been a hospital chaplain for many years, but I was doing these groups to help people get comfortable planning for their own death, learning about their choices, learning about the resources. And I'd been doing those for about 5 years. And a young woman came to my group and said, "You should really do something with this. This has changed my life. This is so wonderful." I said, "I don't know. What would I do?" And I said, "What do you do now?" And she said, "I'm a documentary filmmaker." And so we started talking, and we decided to make a little short video for people in senior housing. And we started getting such good interviews. I knew a lot of patients, and I like to interview, and she's a fabulous photographer. And then we decided, well, this has to be longer, and then we have to have an editor, and then we have to have original music. And then I realized I had to raise all the money to pay all these people, and that's what a producer does, raises all the money.
You know, I didn't really know that.
That's what the producer does, raises the money and pays the technical people. So that's, I've gone from being a chaplain to being a producer.
Well, you know, I've heard wonderful things about this film, and I'm actually kind of close to the subject, having had a son who's gone through this, and we saw him through the end, and I realized through the hospice care that this act of dying, or this thing happening close to you like that, was really an important part of life. And that made me think that, well, we all should know a little bit more about that. We should think more about this. But it's all, I don't know if it's a taboo subject, but it's definitely somewhat frightening to a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh, in the classes that I do, people often say it's a taboo subject in their families, and part of the class is to talk to your family, get comfortable talking to them about what you want. Otherwise, they're going to be left with a lot of confusion if something happens.
Right.
And so then they come back to the class and report, "My parents don't want to talk about it. My children say this is too scary." And then we have to keep going back again and again and help people get comfortable. Something about our culture has made people very fearful. I don't think it's always been that way. I mean, death is a natural part of life, just what you said. But people have become frightened. So this film, I think, takes away the fear. This is a very gentle film.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you now. How are people going to feel about this film? It's called Speaking of Dying, but you say it's a gentle film.
They're going to see real people who they'll like, an older couple and some people in mid-age. They're going to see people in hospice care, a wife talking about her husband's death when he stopped eating and drinking so he wouldn't have to live into Alzheimer's. They're going to see a doctor who had Alzheimer's on the day before he died, but you're going to hear his family saying how well it went for them because they had talked about it. So it's a film to just help people see how much better it is when you've talked about it ahead of time, and to show them some of the resources like hospice and palliative care.
So now one of the things that I'm so happy about this film is you're here, and there's going to be a discussion afterwards.
Yes.
Now, what kind of questions would you normally hear after a screening?
I've shown this film 45 times now, and they've always been different. I mean, people ask their very real questions usually after the film, because we live in the state of Washington, and there's a man in the film who has a very serious progressive illness, who's considering using our new law called the Death with Dignity Law. People often ask about that law because they don't know. They know we have this law, but they don't know what it means and how you access it, and they want to know, is it legal and is it suicide and things like that. So that's one of the questions that comes up. People also have a lot of questions about hospice. They don't know very much about hospice unless they've experienced it. And then people like telling their own stories, which is very helpful.
You know, one thing that I just had not thought of until it came up in our own lives was sort of these last end-of-life directives. And when you said having questions to pose, you can't really wait until the last day. It really takes some thought about what you really do want to have done, because when those days come, frequently you're not thinking that great.
In a crisis, it's very hard for people to know what to do. Plus, sometimes things happen very suddenly, and the family's already grieving. So if you've talked about this way up front, the kinds of decisions you make are different. And so the film shows that. People getting together in groups and talking very early when there's not any kind of a crisis, and doing an advance directive. So, in this country, 70% of people would like to die at home. 20% die at home. And that's because they get caught up in the system and they haven't told anyone. If you've said to your family, I want hospice care, either at home or somewhere else, I know what hospice is, and if I'm dying, that's what I want, then your family can, or your friend, or whoever's speaking for you, can advocate for you. If no one knows what you want, and the doctor says, you want us to do everything, the person's probably going to say, okay, do everything. You end up on machines. You don't want that.
Yeah, not knowing what that really means, everything. Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I am looking forward to this, and hopefully we've touched on some subjects that kind of piqued everybody's interest. Please come out 4 o'clock Thursday. It's going to be at the Education Station here at Twistbrooks. Trudy, you'll be with us?
I will. I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
We'll be selling the DVDs of the film because the DVDs have helped many families. Now I've had a chance to hear their stories of families that couldn't talk. They get the DVD and then they sit down and watch it together, and it gives them something to talk about.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right. Thank you very much. And it is a free screening.
Yeah, the screening is free.
And remember, there's also a discussion afterwards. So please, if you can, pass it around. And this is sponsored by Methow at Home.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And pass the word around to any friends that may be listening, and bring them. 4 o'clock. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trudy.